Hi everyone, just trying to figure my way. This is the first time I'm doing this, so please be a little patient with me. Okay, great. Okay, so I thought I just waited for a moment. Welcome to the newsletter design webinar. Wait for a minute until everyone is here. I guess there will be some more joining. I see several people joining up at the moment. Maybe I just talk a bit about myself first. Until everyone is here. I'm an art director, creative director. I create brands, mainly in the design industry. We work a lot with LAPADA, of course, where we have been creating campaigns and the fair designs for almost 6-7 years now. And it has been very exciting getting to know more and more about the antiques and the arts with LAPADA. And we thought one thing and in this lockdown, etc., could be to help dealers and galleries, etc., to structure their newsletters in a more compelling way. And let me just see if we are there's still people joining. And I would like to sort of look at this in a design sense where we look at it quite analytically, so it should be possible for any one of you identities or so to find a version of this newsletter, but it will sort of hopefully bring a bit clarity in how this could work in an exciting way. What we won't get into is very technical things such as what times of the day to send it, which lists one could buy to send it to people. So this is really meant to be the newsletter that goes out to your customers and clients you are regularly in contact with and want to build relationships. So I will dive in. I think we're sort of complete. I will share a presentation with you. There's a few visuals, obviously, for us to talk about, and it's much easier to see on the visuals what we talk about. So I will share the screen for this. So you should now see the MW logo and our title to this talk. And I'd like to sort of first start with simply figuring out how are we looking at newsletters? How do people read them? And today, most people will read your newsletter on a mobile phone. There might be like this woman here in the park, there might be on the sofa at home. It's not very likely that a lot of people will at work on their work computer have a lot of time to read a newsletter. So the phone on the way to work, etc., or even over the weekend at home is probably the most likely place they will look at it. So that influences the design of your newsletter quite a lot in terms of type size and how it's structured, etc. The next thing people do, they browse through their inbox and they decide what to delete or not to delete. And the only thing we can do there is we hope they really love you, so they will open up your email. So if it's a personal email, that's helpful. That doesn't come just from any organization, but from someone they know. But also we have these sort of first lines we can read in quite a lot of devices and mailboxes. And that's quite important that we can gather from a very simple description like here, birthday beach trip, to the next line, what could be in that newsletter, so we can get people interested. Then something about how things are composed when we look at things on mobile phones, and this is a very typical Instagram. On the left we have a picture feed, and on the right we have a profile. So people are very used to just scroll down on a mobile phone and go picture by picture, and when they're interested in something they will stop. Now it's not only pictures, but the advantage is, since we have lots of art and design, we can really capitalize on that and really show them amazing pictures and things that interest them. The next thing is also text. We need a very strong text, which then feeds back to what we saw earlier when we delete or don't delete emails. If this headline is provocative or not, it is very clear, it's informative, and it has only a very few words. And we have very little time to grasp people's attention. So the first words we write in our newsletter need to relate to the picture they browse, and they need to be very direct. And then once we have created sort of a visual and written newsletter, we obviously want people in the end to do a call to action, such as visit our website, or great, I know about this event, I want to visit it now, etc. So this is roughly how we are browsing through a newsletter. And the newsletter is, in my eyes, something which is more a jumping board to go onto something else, which is then much deeper, like a longer text online, or an event they visit, they come to a store, etc. So it's a very fast consumed piece of information, much faster than, say, print or anything else, even on your website. So now, how will we design this? And I put together some slides with a very simple structure. I put on purpose no pictures in yet, but you can sort of see this is basically a very simple list, a sort of tower almost of information, which has very distinct hierarchy and the way it works. I'm going to zoom in on this now. At the top, we have, very top, you see very small view online. So this is just an aid for people who can't really see the pictures, or want to see it online, or don't want to click on the pictures. But then we have clearly we need to say who we are. We have your the store logo, the gallery logo, etc. And then, very important, there needs to be a very brief, clear headline text, which we then see as we see in the menu of the inbox, but also that speaks together with the image underneath. And then we have a text caption underneath the picture, which we can sort of explain more about the picture. But we also have in that text, we want people to do various calls to action. So either we want them to link to your website, we want them to link to another aspect of that story, of a reference you send out. We would then scroll down, and at the end we have another call to action, so they clearly book a visit, they go to your website, they etc. Even a call to action could also be seen as the very bottom here, the social media icons. And so the newsletter is really here for them to do something afterwards. Of course, they want to read it and you give them information, but we want them to move on and engage more with you in some sense. And we then have obviously your personal greetings, and then we should have very clear the store name, address, etc. And not 5 addresses, or not, it needs to be very simple. So the amount of text, which I already think is quite a lot, and what we have to do here is that should not be more than this, really, because the more we have, the less we see the relevant things. And it's much more important that you point out what is relevant and only show that, so people can really simply follow the steps and actually do what you want them to do. Of course, at the bottom, we need to have our unsubscribe text that can be fairly small. So I want to talk more about the newsletter story and what makes a newsletter actually more exciting, and not just about the structure. And what makes it more exciting is if we tell people a story about the object, about what you do, what makes you so excited about antiques, and etc., etc. And within that story, we of course pack in products that then relate to sort of path to purchase. But if we would only just send people lots of chairs or desks, etc., they will be just overwhelmed with the amount of things there is to buy out there, etc. And there's so many newsletters like that. So the way we can grab their attention is much more by making the newsletter more interesting, by telling a story. And the way we could do this is now at an example shown now this time with pictures. Again, we have dealer logo, but there we write why Alvar Aalto's Chair 21 revolutionized design. So one could read this as a provocation. Well, hold on, I think someone else revolutionized design in that time much more. Is it the Tonnet chairs, whatever? And or someone else might think, oh, I would like to know much more about this, or I'm a fan of Alvar Aalto. So this headline here is really important because not only it links to the picture below, it also expands more on the picture, and it's not just anymore a picture of a simple chair. We could even have a picture of Alvar Aalto, like we see further below, to even more drive the story home about him as an architect and furniture designer. But also it has already the name in it, Alvar Aalto's. It asks a question, why? It features the Chair 21 for people who are really into it and know about these things. And then there's also something about revolutionized design. So there's a really significant aspect about it. So we try to compose a headline here, which includes various aspects to sort of really get people engaged together with the picture. And this is the very moment people decide to scroll or to delete the email. And I think that moment is really key, that we can grab their attention and make them scroll down and find out more. We then have at the bottom, we have obviously the link that probably leads to your website, Chair 21 by Alvar Aalto in 1933, where they could find out more about the state of how shall I say, the condition of the chair. You might have detailed pictures, etc., or you have it photographed in situ. Then we go further down, we maybe explain more, how did he design the chair, and why was it, where was it before, etc. And in this case here, we also have Philip Morton-Shan and Jeffrey Bumfrey, who set up Finmar, and then there's another link to that. So you can see there is several aspects you can dock onto the story. So all of a sudden, it's not anymore just an object and a price. It really becomes something we can be fascinated about, something we want to know more about and want to engage more. It's a story, it's information. And even here with the sketch, we can refer to another exhibition that was exhibited, etc. And so I would really encourage you, if you have any objects or artworks, and is there pictures of the artist in studio? Is there sketches that led to the sculpture they created, and so on? So we can really flesh this out, and we can give people more than just simply buy this to that price. And from all I've learned or in the antiques and arts is everyone has amazing stories, and everyone has these backgrounds and the origin where things come from. And I think this is really key to build on that, and that would engage people much more. Now, we might have multiple stories. It depends a bit how often you send out the newsletter, and some people do quarterly, but they might have 2-3 stories of different things. For that, I wanted to just quickly look at this structure as a sort of expansion of the initial structure. And it's obviously a long list, but we can see in the middle we got another headline, and also at the top there's some extra text. So because we got several stories, we need to sort of have a small introduction. So the story at the very bottom is not hidden away, and we can engage people at the top, and they would even see that before they open the email. We then have the headline to separate that introduction from the next story. And I show this with pictures as well, so we get a better idea. So here we have the introduction, and we then summarize the background behind it. We sort of give it, the newsletter, an overall theme: birch plywood transformed furniture design in the 20th century. And then we have more about Gerald Summers and Alvar Aalto. So although Alvar Aalto is much further down, we have his name up here, and we also give a sort of overarching theme, and that's what we then see in the inbox again. Then we go into the bigger headline, and you might have noticed the text on these designs is fairly big. It's a bit difficult to understand. I don't know what computer screen you look at, how big you see it, but if you imagine the size of the phone together with the size of the newsletter, really clear and simple text with fewer words, but also decent size, is very helpful. So we then go to the Isokon trolley story, portrait, and then the relating architecture, for example, and period pieces, etc. And then we see already the Alvar Aalto headline again, and we then need clear spacing between the caption. So the caption needs to clearly relate to this picture. We need then a larger space here to have the headline to the next picture. So we very much understand this is a headline to the next story, and this relates to the previous story. And obviously, when we go further down again, we need to really look at that spacing again as well. I try to keep the spacing really simple, but it's extremely essential to clearly structure editorial and such a newsletter. So the caption obviously always needs to be very clearly relating to the picture above. The headline above the picture needs to relate to the picture below. If we want to separate a picture and or 2 stories, even here we can see from the previous caption that relates to this picture, we have a little gap. So intuitively, it's very clear what relates to what. So we don't need to sort of overcomplicate things in the design. So these spaces, if they're set the right way, it's very clear what we're looking at and what the text relates to. I move on a bit. That sort of sums up the very simple newsletter design, how it works best. Obviously, you can use your own font as long as it's well readable online. You can use your own backgrounds, etc. I think it's probably good if the backgrounds are not too wild, because it takes often attention away from the pictures you put together. You might have different softwares. You might use CreateSend or MailChimp. They can also all be reconfigured to some degree, and it's advisable to either have go with one of those platforms or have a very cleverly coded HTML newsletter, so it adjusts to all the browser windows or email inboxes. So the more we play with backgrounds, I think actually, or the layouts, the more clever we need to become with the software, how it works. And often overcomplicating it doesn't really help at all, especially as everything has to be responsive. So the tower principle or the long list principle I'm showing you now is actually very simple and important to follow to not overcomplicate it. When people open newsletters, quite often they have a setting that one can't see the pictures. So again, really important that you have your headline or an introduction text above the picture that makes people feel, okay, I can trust this. This is about, etc., and it's from this store, etc., or gallery. And therefore, they then click onto the email to look at the pictures as well, so they would download them. So the headline above the picture is not only for structure, but also to sort of engage people and to give them sort of reassurance what it is. I would like to talk more about storytelling because obviously if the newsletter is done in a successful way, you're going to be really good at visual storytelling. And the way we should really look at this is, instead of just saying, this is a great chair, and therefore it works like that and it was built like that, and therefore I like antiques in general, we should really do it the other way around. So think about what you're really passionate about, why you love this object so much, why you are having an event, why you are in this whole business for your whole life, for whatever you did, and why you're so fascinated by it. And then think about how it came about that these objects exist, how they were crafted, how they traveled the world, what how you came to them in a sense of in a storytelling sense. And then we can go more into detail why this particular piece is so exceptional. And this way around, people will much more be interested in the information of the story and in your passion, and they want to connect to you much more than if there is simply a picture of a chair on the newsletter and they should decide if they should buy it or not. I've put together a few themes. They're not particularly story ideas, they're just sort of themes to give you some insight how one could create these stories. So there's various things from the heritage of an object to craftsmanship to how it was made. Are there pictures of how it was made? Sometimes we have etchings or black and white photographs, or there's old drawings as I've shown you. And the same for artists, the amount of sketches and pictures of artists and that can surround an artwork can make the artwork much more attractive because we do tell a story. Then we can also talk about materials, how it was previously used, the previous owners, etc., etc. And I sound a bit, how shall I say, naive here probably to you, because this is what you do and what you're really good at. And I've heard so many amazing stories of artists, gallerists, and people at LAPADA talking about objects that are really fascinating. So there should be plenty of this. And of course, there is not only just about artworks and objects, there is also to say things about your store, your business, your an event you're hosting, and especially now in this time during the lockdown and how this will all open up or not, etc. There have been some success stories of people talking about their design studios or other things where it's not so much that we talk about the lockdown, but that we do something about our businesses. And there might be news stories in what you do with your business, why you're changing it, that are really attractive to your readers, that could get them engaged and connect to you. And then obviously there is all kinds of other knowledge that comes beyond what you're selling or who you are. Maybe that's a certain knowledge about other things, and it might not even be about a product. And you could also send a newsletter that just demonstrates how knowledgeable you are about certain things, and you have a great story to tell. So once we have created a story, and I just want to sort of bring that in a wider context of the newsletter, more in terms of how you run your stories, because we want to be efficient with this as well. So we would create a story. We would then also decide, well, how could we create it? What is the medium we have? And we can obviously create it through text. We can, whatever it needs there, headlines, longer picture captions, etc. The images, there could be interior shots, situs, details, etchings, portraits of people, etc. Then obviously there's video formats, etc. And then there's also audio, which is not for the newsletter now, but for other elements you'll see in a moment. And once we have composed the story with this medium, we then choose a channel. And most likely you would want to use all or many channels to publish your story. And one of them is the newsletter. But you might also want to tell a journalist in the press. You might also want to put it on your website or Instagram and Facebook. And so the idea is really, if you create a great story, you should use these channels and re-edit the story slightly to then really push it out there. And it might take a slight different form here or there, but it saves you a huge amount of time then having to create a story for each channel. And so these stories, they should be really multifaceted in terms of the way you communicate them. And then after, on each channel, basically on every piece of communication, you should have a call to action, and you should look at the channel, what you could expect of these people, how do you reach them, what would they do. So obviously if we send a personal invitation in print to someone, it's a very different deal than if we post something on Instagram, we're talking to someone we know, etc. And so the call to action might be very different, but it's really worth thinking about what you want people to do with your newsletter. Do you want them to go to your website? Do you want them to come to your store? Well, probably both, but there's a reality to it, what they will do. And the more you think about the call to action, the more purposeful your communication piece becomes in that sense. So that's it. We haven't talked about some other elements, like in terms of the newsletter. So the responsiveness obviously needs to be important, which is more a technical thing these days, so people can see it on a mobile phone. As I said, the time of the week you send it and so on. But I sort of thought what I've shown you here shows the basic structure and helps you probably refocusing exactly what is your passion, how do you want to put it out there, what are your stories and your ideas you can tell people. So I'm gonna stop sharing here, and I'm gonna see if there aren't any questions or anything, which makes me slightly nervous because I hope you've all heard what I said or saw the presentation well, but please, there's some questions coming in. So we would have some time to answer some questions now if you have, and let me just see I will just answer these here on screen. Do you have any views on the frequency of newsletters, especially as so many people are doing it at the moment? There was a bit of problem about a month ago or 2 months ago where everyone sent out the coronavirus newsletter and people literally just deleted everything. And not that I have huge insight, but it was a bit a difficult moment for newsletters because everyone wanted to say, be compassionate and everything and explain things. But it's really important to, I think I can speak for myself in a way, how we do it with our studio. We send about 4 to 6 newsletters out a year, and it depends a bit the kind of service we offer. We feel 4 to 6 newsletters we can make exciting enough, informative enough. We can show several projects in it. We have always about 3 or 4 stories. Some have 1 or 2 pictures, some have 5 pictures. And so it feels more like a quarterly roundup in a way, and we keep people informed. Now, your business is most likely a bit different, where you have new stock or new objects, or you want to invite people, let them know that you're at the fair, you're at LAPADA also. So you would probably have more newsletters. What is just really important is that each newsletter is meaningful. The newsletters which simply show every single time there's another object to buy, they become very boring, and there's too many of them out there. So really think about how what makes you different, and how can you engage people in a more interesting story. Now, even if you do have a story, I wouldn't recommend sending out, I don't know, 20, 30. I would probably keep it to 1 a month, because also if it's too many times, how many times can we really be that exciting and different? And very quickly, the more frequent, the more a pattern which people get bored of. Keep reading. There's a question from Graham. I think monthly newsletters, I guess there is a good thing about the regular thing, and there will surely be some people who love to receive it every month. It looks like what you're writing here, Graham, you have actually there's about a third which look at it, which is a good return, I think. In these days, it used to be higher, but clearly because of social media, a lot of people have moved from newsletters to social media, and that happened to everyone. I think even if you send it out monthly, make it special. What is exciting this month? And I used to art direct magazines, and one of my editors once said, well, every magazine, it was a weekly magazine at the time, and every issue is special. It needs to be every single week. It needs to be a special issue. No reader should ever feel I'm going to get the regular, whatever it is, magazine in my door. It should every time feel special. So I think the more you think about what this month is the individual story, the more you can keep people engaged, and the longer they will also read it. I think when I talked about the design, I don't want to go too much into the numbers and when to send it, because that's not exactly my expertise. But in terms of the design, you can keep the same template and everything. what is really important is that the content of your newsletter, the story, the pictures you're sourcing, the way you write the text, the links you're embedding to which other websites or to your own websites are very precise, and that is completely synced and very well thought through. So you have the most engaging picture of the Alvar Aalto chair drawing. And then from that drawing, it leads to your website, and there's maybe 3 more drawings, or there is other pictures, and your website is updated to your newsletter. So when people actually sort of click through the web and your newsletter, you create the whole story and embed it in your communications operations in that sense, and it feels if they can sort of they can dig deeper. And online I see there's 2 kinds of people. There's the skaters and the diggers, and there's some people, they just browse like a skateboarder, they just go across from one headline to the next. And there's some people, they then find something interesting and they start digging and they want more information and more, and we should give them that by having these links that then relate to your website. I think I hope that answered your question. I think it's definitely important your newsletter works on mobile phones. I would estimate 60% at least look at it on the mobile phone and not on desktop. And it could be very likely that on the phone they have just more time where they are to browse, to look at it next to looking at the news, where on a desktop often one is at work. So the design should really be configured to that. Yes, any more questions? You're welcome. Good, I think I hope this helped, and I hope I made it simple enough. So it's a template to follow if you, whatever technology you use, and if MailChimp or anything else or your own. I think if you have any questions, you're always free to give me a ring or call LAPADA. What we do is we offer sort of 1-hour consultations for people and their brands. We could have a Zoom call together, and in advance I could look at your communications and the way you manage your identity, and then in the call I could simply talk to you about it, and then we can analyze it together what the best solutions would be for you. So please get in touch with LAPADA, or you can also email me directly on micha@michaweidmannstudio.com. Let me just put that back up again quickly so you can see. Spelling of my name is not the easiest, so so you're welcome to email me, and if you would like to do that, or just have a chat about something else you have in mind. Yeah, so thank you very much, and I hope this helped everyone a bit further to create their newsletters. Okay, bye.